like on Indeed and a few other of the websites. And I got a little bit of pushback myself. Some people were calling it very left of center liberation theology. What would you say to those sort of more conservative people who are so eager to discredit it?
I think one thing that we ideologically is just a difference between some of my evangelical brothers and sisters and myself is that I think there needs to be balance in how we talk about theology. Like, it is great to want to desire to be with Jesus and to go to heaven. That's a great aspiration. I can totally understand it. But we also have to care about the conditions in which people are living in right here and now. Like, people right here and now want to feel liberation. And one way they experience that is through the revelation of the risen Jesus, who is here in the world right now, asking us, will you bring heaven on earth? Will you be partners with God to bring the gospel to the world here and now? It's about here and now, not just future.
Not just that perfect body promised.
Yes.
Okay.
You should have heard Sara the other day in class, in our pluralism class, Interfaith. Okay. She was like, we have to fix our society now and not worry, because we were talking about, I think, birth control. And she was like, rather than tell these women they can't have their birth control, we kind of have to fix society, and all the unwanted children now that are, that are happening, and the abortions that happen in back alley abortions. Instead of telling a woman they can't have that, we kind of have to fix what's going on, rather than just saying you can't.
Right. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of solution-oriented to some of the policies being pushed forward lately. One of the things that I have, through the Reddit community of Christianity message boards, they had said something that I thought was really neat. They said, normalizing differences and creating space for people with disabilities in religion sounds like the next step. Can you comment on that?
Yes. I think what's really interesting is when we talk about the progress that we've made as both society and church, when we look at the passing of the Americans with Disabilities Act 30 years ago, which is the most comprehensive civil legislation on the federal level that protects against discrimination, you also see that most of the mainline Protestant churches have also put out legislation around that same time to prevent discrimination from happening to persons with disabilities employed within the church who attend church. But what I find is the legislation exists, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the law has been implemented. Mm-hmm. That there are still lack of accessibility, both physically, where there's no ramps and there's no accommodations for buildings or for education programs or in housing or public transportation. A lot of times people can't attend, concerts and public events because there are only so many seats for a person in a wheelchair.
No, you're right. One of the classes ministry with adults that I was talking, there was a older gentleman, by his own account, saying that he couldn't even he couldn't liturgize anymore because the marble steps he had to walk up kept him from just doing something he enjoyed doing every week when he was younger. So just on the simplest of bases, you're saying that even in church, we don't have accommodations that help people that have disabilities.
Right. And the church is a place that we're going to experience that because if people don't experience a disability earlier or in middle adulthood, they definitely will experience as they age some loss of independence and just as a result of aging have conditions that are disabling.
Yes.
And I find that church oftentimes people will leave. And if you talk to those people one-on-one, you find why they left. Like maybe they couldn't read the bulletin anymore, or they couldn't hear what was being said. And they don't tell anyone that they aren't able to participate. They just leave.
Yeah, it becomes, unfortunately, kind of an embarrassment for them. They don't want to be seen that way anymore because in their everyday life, they're already having to deal with the changes of aging. So having to alert it and having people have to make accommodations for them, it's hard for them. And honestly, we should be thinking about that stuff already so they don't have to put themselves in such a vulnerable spot.
You know, Sarah, I can't help but think about Dr. Starkey when we start having conversations about disability theology. And I know that not only was he our professor and friend in so many different ways, but one of the things that he had said to me about 2 days before we made the decision to begin thinking about assisted living was that he said, through this whole thing, Sara Martin's paper keeps coming to mind because I'm recognizing all of a sudden from an able-bodied person, I'm going to high levels of disability. And it's making me consider what she had written a lot more seriously than I think I probably would have.
You're speaking of her senior paper.
Yes. I'm curious. Do you want to share some thoughts with that little piece of information I just offered you?
Oh, sure. You know, I think that really speaks to, the reality of the majority of people in our world who have never experienced what it is like to be vulnerable in your own body. If you've spent most of your life able-bodied or neurotypical, you're not used to having to ask others for help. You have always been so reliant on yourself. But if you're neurologically diverse and have bad pain days or bad mental health days, or just when your brain doesn't work right, you have to find ways to ask for help, to adapt, to change your schedule. You have to think about how you use every bit of your energy in a way that most people don't even think about.
Yeah.
That's true.
Dr. Starkey used to ride around with me in my car for a very long period of time. But as we got closer to his end and his disabilities got more and more difficult, I started taking him around in Annie's car because Annie's car was a little bit higher off the ground and it allowed him to get in and out. And I was becoming considerate of his needs and his disabilities as those disabilities and needs became more and more evident. And I'm wondering, how do we get society to begin to recognize needs of people instead of just walking by them? How do we draw more attention to creating levels of accommodation for people who need them?
Well, I think the big thing is persons with disabilities have to be willing to speak about their own experiences, and we have to build brave spaces where we can have conversations about what it is like to be a person with a disability, like what is our day-to-day life like. I know personally when I've had conversations about, spoon theory, talking about energy levels and what it's like when days you have more energy or less energy, I've kind of used that analogy to talk to people in my life about how I'm feeling. So just that we have more of an awareness of my day-to-day abilities vary on my body, but that has taken conversation and relationships to build that level of awareness.
Nice. So from the 405, I got a thing here that says, she makes me think of Nancy Eiseland's The Disabled God. Have you read that?
Yes, I have.
Okay, cool. What is a person calling from the texting from the 405? What are they implying? What type of similarities are you drawing here?
Sara?
Yes.
What from that book would you what in that book would you say is making somebody think about what is the disabled God about disability theology?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm completely in the dark because I have no idea.
It explores kind of like the vulnerability of Jesus and the vulnerability of Nancy's own life as a person with a disability. And it really kind of explores this idea that when Jesus went through the crucifixion, Jesus' body was changed. So Jesus post-resurrection had scars and injuries on his body that didn't exist before. So Jesus was living into his own vulnerability, and his body was changed. There was a before and an after. And I just think her book is really helpful and was really one of the first books that I read about disability theology.
So who are the cutting-edge people out there today? Because I just looked her up, and it appears that she had passed away in 2009.
Yes. So off the top of my list, John Swinton is fantastic. I recommend his work. There's a United Methodist pastor. Her name is Kathy Brown, and she's written a book specifically about preaching, about the vulnerability of disability. I recommend anything by Amos Young. One of my new favorite books that just came out in 2019 is Bethany McKinley Fox's book, Disability and the Way of Jesus. And I also recommend The Disabled God. I think that is a great introduction to disability theology.
Was that The Way of God?
The Disabled God?
Oh, The Disabled God. Okay. Thank you.
Well, Sarah, I think you'll be pleased to know that you've gotten a lot of attention already. The Lavelle School of the Blind, School for the Blind staff, students and graduates are listening, and they're passing along the information to other people as we speak. So, do you have anything that you'd like to sign off until? Sorry, I'm facing my own temporary disability with this cough and trying to work a radio. Do you have anything that you want to sign off and with a kind of a lasting effort, a final thought?
I think the big thing is don't be afraid of asking questions and thinking about the experiences of persons with disabilities and their stories in the gospel. Don't be afraid of thinking about your own life experience and just asking questions and being open to your own vulnerability and your own self-identity. Like, you should be proud of who you are as a person, because you are perfectly and wonderfully made. And sometimes you have sucky days, but I think most of the time life can be really great.
Absolutely.
I agree with that. I have my own anxiety, and sometimes I'm so embarrassed to actually go out there and say that because I don't want to seem, pardon again the expression, weak, but that's something we do have to do, is just talk about it.
Well, Sarah, I don't know if you noticed it or not, but AlphaNerds has a little moniker. It says, inherit the earth. What part of Scripture do you think that came from?
Maybe the Gospels, maybe the Sermon on the Mount.
Okay. Yeah, and the meek shall inherit the earth. That is our little slogan. Our concept is that through the concept of being inclusive, we could take all people of all walks of life, be it their in their seclusion and isolation, be it their lives and disabilities, be it whatever it is. AlphaNerds, the concept is that together and through building our own network and our own ideals, that we shall inherit the earth. What do you think about that?
No, I think that's exactly what Jesus commanded. Jesus was all about